Hey, it's Retro Buddy, and today we're building an Elven library called the Library of Ithillia. On the right, you see the reference photo we got from printablescenery.com, and on the left is my recreation of the Library of Ithillia. I just want to say a big thank you to the kind people at printablescenery.com for allowing me to use this photo and to recreate their building design with permission. I highly recommend you check out this website because the stuff they make is amazing. I begin with one of the key pieces of the build, which is an archway facade on the second floor. The effect that I'm going for is I want the pillars to look like tree branches that interweave as they ascend. I begin with birchwood, but it's too thin, so I switch to sandstone wall, eventually trading out the birch fence gates and most of the top for sandstone pillars and blocks. In the end, I switch from cyan wool to prismarine because I think it makes a better color palette. In finishing this key piece, it will help me decide how big the rest of the build needs to be. Next, I begin plotting out the proportions of the building, knowing that the arch must sit within a circle and on top of a hexagon. This will help me know generally where the walls will go and help form the shape of the floors of the building as we go. Once the proportions are set, I begin adding additional details to the front facade, beginning with a second external arch, and then eventually color palette testing some organic builds I'd like to add to the outside. I quickly realized that the proportions are a little small for the diagonal walls, and so I readjust them and begin trying to build the diagonals. You can see me attempt to recreate the same pattern I have on the front of the building, but along the diagonal. It's pretty challenging. In the end, I settle for something that looks a bit like a checkerboard, but I feel delivers the same effect. I begin wireframing the building, comfortable that I've solved most of the trickiest elements of the facade. I start with two circles tapering into one another for a base before wireframing the large front door. At the top of the door, I add the wireframe for the second floor, building off of what we had made in the previous clips, with the arch sitting on top of the hexagon. I add a matching circle for the third floor that is equal to the circle on the first floor, before adding a base hexagon to match the second floor. I then begin wireframing a dome-shaped roof. The goal at this point is not to fill in the entire build, but just to wireframe the basic shapes so we can get a sense of the feel, the scale, and the proportion of the building, and that if any of it was off, we'd be able to adjust now instead of later after detailing the building. I also add small details like this arch on the roof, again to get a sense of what the building will feel like when it's complete. In the end, I'm happy with the proportions and begin moving on to the next phase. I start building out the diagonals of the first floor, building an arch, and then filling and detailing each inside arch with a different color palette side by side. I'm unsure which way the building's going to go at this point, and so I use different blocks for the backfill as well, trying to see which I like best. Eventually I settle on the quartz bricks, and the final detailing I do is I fill in outside the omega symbol with mushroom stems to help accent it against the quartz. After settling on the color palette of jungle wood for the backfill, I copy-paste the diagonals all the way around the build, and I replace the base with white quartz bricks. I've also raised the build up by 2 blocks here to try to extend the base and introduce a pattern into it, but it doesn't really work out, so I abandon it. Moving on to the front door, I shape the doors within the arch using sandstone, and begin detailing to the top and the side using jungle wood and prismarine. Attempt a few designs on the door and change the blocks around to see what different colors look like, eventually settling on prismarine walls to put a design into the front of the door and changing the arch to strip jungle wood. We start by touching up some of the details on the front door, like switching the sandstone to strip jungle wood and switching the jungle wood to sandstone, and then also detailing with some additional jungle wood planks. Then we come around to recreate the design that's on the diagonals, but on the flat wall at the back. The tricky part was getting the omega symbols to be roughly proportionate so that they don't clash too badly with the other walls. Next, we move on to the second floor, where we copy and paste in the main arch from earlier in the video. I begin detailing around it to fit it in with the rest of the build. I add in small ornate details, and then I try a black backing to make it pop, but it's too contrasty, so I take it out. After copy and pasting in the old diagonals, I realized that they're not going to work, so I recreate the first floor diagonals on the second floor. Once I'm happy with the design, I copy and paste the diagonals all the way around the build and fill in the flat side at the back of the hexagon to match. Once done, we move to the roof to build one of the diagonal arches. At first, I tried to eyeball it, but I missed, so I built a diagonal from the center of the dome to align the diagonal arch. This seemed to work a lot better, which was tricky because I had to find a way to maintain the diagonal along the circle you see that makes up the base of the dome. After trimming and detailing the diagonal arch with jungle wood, I ended up pretty happy with the visual effect. Even though it's not symmetrical, from far away it gives off the right look, and it presents at the correct angle for a six-pointed roof. In this next section, I fill out 1/4 of the dome until I reach the peak. I do a quick copy-paste check to make sure that the proportions of the roof are correct before removing it and going on to detailing the remaining arches. I add in a secondary junglewood arch, and then add in sandstone pillars to match the rest of the frontal facade. With that, it completes the entire front side of our building. I then recreate the details inside the diagonal arch, which turned out to be very challenging. It's especially challenging because we have a six-pointed roof. It means that there's no easy way to make the build symmetrical that also looks right to the eye. In this case, you end up having to play around with the blocks a lot through trial and error just to see what looks and feels right. But once I have a design I'm happy with, I copy and paste the roof all the way around, which really brings the build along. It's starting to feel nearly complete, and putting the roof on really gives it a sense of what the building will feel like when it's done. I ground the building by finishing off the base, and I attempt the pattern from earlier, this time with more success. I'm hoping that this pattern of prismarine along the quartz will break up the white in the bottom of the building and also tie it together now that the roof is complete. I copy and paste the design all the way around once I'm happy. And in the end, I really think it does tie the whole building together. I move on to adding some organic elements by putting trees as pillars along each of the connecting points of the hexagon. The trees are a really great tool because the points where the diagonals join aren't always clean, so the organic build helps hide any tiny mistakes or discrepancies. The last thing I do is I detail the roof by separating it up with some trim. Once the trim is down, I soften some of the hard edges with stairs and slabs, and add an ornament to the very top of the building, really bringing the whole thing together. For one of the final details, I extend the branches of the trees up and over the lip of the roof, with tiny little twigs climbing their way to the center of the dome. And with that, we've finished our library of Ithillia. I'll put the reference photo back up so you can see the side-by-side comparisons. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and click the bell icons for notifications so you can see when I upload more build content like this. If you have suggestions or recommendations or reference photos for builds you'd like me to do, please leave a comment or a link. I'm Retro Buddy, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.